Good evening, subscribers and fans, and welcome to Mattsquatch Presents, brought to you by The Paranormal. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Mattsquatch Presents. We have a very special episode tonight. MC has sent me an encounter that he had in Lytle Creek, California, which I find very fascinating, and he was kind enough to send it to me. He didn't want to be on the show in person. He wanted to remain anonymous, which is completely fine. I understand. So he sent me a nice little write-up, and I'd like to read it to you folks today. MC says, so it was January or February of 1999, and my dad took me out camping to the remote area of Lytle Creek. The campground is called Paiute Canyon Campground. There's only one dirt road in and out, and it runs parallel to a dry creek bed and sits on kind of a horseshoe canyon. Where we set up camp was called Yellow Post Site. They're literally out in the middle of nowhere with nothing but hills and trees for a mile around. Being that it was earlier in the year, there was still snow on the ground. We had set up camp, unloaded the truck, cooked dinner, and were relaxing by the fire. I remember it being fairly light out. I'm not sure if it was a full noon, but the snow was lit up on the ground and the mountains were lit up as well. It was just beautiful. While we were sitting there by the fire, I remember it getting rather quiet. Then from our 10 or 11 o'clock position, we heard a really long howl. The howl was definitely not a coyote. We live in a neighborhood that sits at the base of a small mountain, and there are coyotes and mountain lions in the area, and we hear coyotes almost on a nightly basis. This wasn't a coyote. I asked my dad after the first vocalization, what was that? He replied, I have no idea. That's when I heard another howl. And then within a few seconds from behind us, we heard a whoop coming from our 4 o'clock position. I should also mention that our backs were to a hill that was crisscrossed with game trails. When we heard the whoop from behind us, we promptly loaded every gun we had brought with us. While we were loading the guns, the call and response was continuing with definite movement. We could hear the vocalizations rotating around our camp. I say the whole encounter lasted about maybe an hour or so. After a few minutes, we sat back down around the fire. Vocals stopped. We finally turned in, and for a while we lay in our tent. We talked about what happened. We suggested that in the morning we go out looking for tracks. My dad said that was a good idea. I should mention that Bigfoot has always been a topic with me and my dad when we would go camping. It was more of a what if Bigfoot is real kind of thing. My dad's been fascinated with the subject, which has transferred to me. I grew up seeing In Search of and similar TV shows. When all this was going on, Bigfoot wasn't even in our minds. We were going through our mental checklist if we could figure out what was coming up, and it was coming up empty. Anyway, we got up in the morning with full intentions of eating and going out to look for tracks. Unfortunately, unbeknownst to us, a small storm had moved through the area and dropped some snow. It wasn't much, but it had covered our tracks in the camp, so any tracks that were out there from whatever was vocalizing the night before was gone. The rest of the trip was pretty much uneventful. Months later, I was watching a Bigfoot TV show, and I heard the Ohio howl. And when I heard the sounds, the hair on the back of our necks stood up. It was exactly what we had heard in the canyon. It wasn't until we considered that it was possibly Bigfoot that we had heard that night. I've since done some research on the subject and found a few encounters in the general area. Well, that's the end of the email, and I will say, yes, there are encounters of Lytle Creek going back a long way. Being right between kind of the breaking point between the LA Mountain Range and the Arrowhead Big Bear Mountain Range. Both areas are loaded with sightings. It being kind of in the off-winter area, Lytle Creek being a little lower than the upper parts of the mountains. I think it's incredibly possible. And the fact that they heard howls means that, in my opinion, that the Bigfoots were comfortable enough to signal or say, hey, there's people here, there's a fire, and they're probably just keeping an eye on them. I don't know. They said they loaded their guns, and I do not blame them one bit at all. If I was hearing howls, and even if it wasn't Bigfoot, it would still be scary. So for you guys, I'd like to play the Ohio howl real quick, or a portion of it, just so you have an idea of what he's talking about. So that was the Ohio howl. I wanted to play it for you to give you guys a little scale, and I've heard the Ohio howl, I don't know, 500 times, and every time it still kind of just quiets me and leaves me in awe, like you heard something very special. And I tell you, I've been out in the woods, and if I heard that, it would be an underwear changing moment. Anyway, thanks a lot. Please like and subscribe. This has been kind of a little bit different from my usual videos. I'm going to try some things. I'm probably going to have another video out this Thursday. That's kind of the schedule, is Mondays and Thursdays, and then sometimes a third video. So 2 to 3 videos a week if anybody's curious. This Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I will be at the International Bigfoot Conference, and I'll probably do a pre-game video to let you know what's going on. Thanks, guys.